I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to protect the Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and He is not attributed with fatigue, like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. Whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and He is truthful about everything that He conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in his grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So Alhamdulillah, we are grateful to Allah that He has enabled us to be among those who acquire the knowledge of Islam, and that He has willed for us to be among those who have the knowledge in Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in many hadith, he informed us about the virtue of seeking the knowledge and the virtue of the one who seeks the knowledge and the virtue of the knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he described the circles of knowledge as gardens of paradise. And he informed us that the angels, they surround the sessions of knowledge, and there are special mercies and blessings that descend upon the attendees. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he informed us that the reward that is associated with learning a chapter of the knowledge is greater than the reward associated with praying 1,000 of the optional rak'ahs, the optional perfect rak'ahs. So, Alhamdulillah, and congratulations and good news and glad tidings to the one who Allah Ta'ala has enabled to seek the knowledge. So Alhamdulillah, we reached to explaining about the chapter of apostasy, and we're still giving examples of the first category, where the author said, legitimating what is unlawful by consensus and commonly known among the Muslims to be unlawful, while the legitimizer while it is known by the legitimizer to be unlawful, such as adultery and fornication, sodomy, killing, stealing, and forcefully taking money of others unjustly. So this rule, it applies to matters in Islam that are commonly known amongst both the scholars amongst the Muslims and the non-scholars. So you can generally categorize the Muslims into two categories. You have the scholars, excuse me, the scholars, which are divided into four levels. The entry level scholar, which is called a conveyor. Basically, they convey the cases that are inside of a particular school of law. So, if someone, for example, learns the school of law of Shaafi, the cases, but he doesn't learn, for example, their references, meaning the reference points that a Shafi'i used to come to that judgment, then that person is just a conveyor. So that's the first level, is the first category. Second category would be the preponderator, someone within a school of law that they would be able to give more weight to one saying over another. Um, so this would be like a Nawawi, like a Rafi'i in the Shafi'i school. And the third level is someone who, within that school of law, they can use the fundamentals that were laid down by a Shafi'i, and they can extract judgments using those fundamentals from within the school. This is called the mujtahid within the school. And then there's the fourth level, which is the absolute mujtahid, which is someone who is authorized to extract judgments directly from the Quran and from the Hadith and from the consensus, and using the comparison to come up with a judgment for a case that's not already explicitly mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith. So this would be like a Shafi'i himself, like an Imam Malik himself, like Abu Hanifa, like Al Imam Ahmad. So someone's considered a scholar if they are one of these four categories. And whoever is not in one of these four categories, then they're not a scholar. They're considered a layman. They're considered someone that is not a scholar. But there are some cases that both the layman and the scholar, all of them, they know this case. It's something that's common among the Muslims, something that is common amongst the Muslims, that they know it, and they um, if you ask a 7-year-old Muslim, they would know the answer right away. So if you ask a 7-year-old, what's the judgment of eating pork? 7-year-old Muslim, he's gonna tell you right away, haram. If you ask, if you ask uh, any Muslim, what's the judgment of drinking alcohol? They'll say haram. If you ask any Muslim, what's the judgment of of zina? They'll say haram. So these are judgments that are known by necessity, commonly known. This is what we mean by commonly known among the Muslims to be unlawful. So if someone, they legitimize that, and if someone says about alcohol that it's halal, someone says about um, fornication that is halal, if someone says about um, killing unjustly that it's halal, then they blaspheme. That's the meaning of that, legitimizing what is unlawful by consensus and commonly known among the Muslims to be unlawful. And all the mujtahids agree fornication is forbidden. All the mujtahids agree that fornication is forbidden. All the mujtahids agree that drinking alcohol is forbidden. All the mujtahids agree that killing unjustly is forbidden. And all the Muslims, they know this. And from the youngest Muslim, like a 7-year-old, to a grown adult Muslim, whether they're a scholar or not, whether they're just the regular, um, the regular Muslim that comes to the mosque, or that has a worldly, just has a dunya job, whether they have a beard or not, whether they wear a suit or not. Any Muslim you ask him, is alcohol forbidden? They're gonna say immediately yes. Any Muslim you ask him, what's the judgment of eating pork? They're gonna say haram, because this is commonly known. It's like something that is commonly known, famous. Even a lot of non-Muslims, they know about that. So if somebody, they contradict something like that in the religion, and they legitimize something that is unlawful by consensus, then that person, it's as if he's saying, even though I am aware that Allah judged that such and such a matter is unlawful, I'm going to say, that person is going to say, I'm going to say the opposite. And so basically saying the opposite is saying that, saying that, it's as if they're saying that God is wrong. Because if the judgment is uh, one way, the judgment was revealed to be one way, and someone tries to say it's another way, it's as if they're saying God is wrong. So this is, of course, takes the person out of Islam. So this is very important to understand. Now, what if there is there is a rare situation? What if there was a Muslim who, even though, they're like, let's say, 30 years old, they never learned that, for example, they never learned that one of these things is unlawful. Even though, yeah, it's a difficult scenario to imagine, but it's possible. So let's say that that person born to Muslim parents, those Muslim parents, they integrated that child, that Muslim child, into a Western society. They didn't put him in an Islamic school. They send him to a non-Muslim boarding school. Let's just say, and they never learned the basics of Islam. So they never knew that the Muslims believe that fornication is unlawful, or et cetera, et cetera. One of these things. And so because they never heard that, they obviously said the wrong thing and said that one of these things is lawful. He legitimized it. Like, let's say drinking alcohol. Let's say he legitimized it. He didn't know. This was, yani, we didn't know that this is what the Muslims believe. He never heard this is the judgment. He was completely unaware through ignorance, right? Let's just imagine such a scenario exists, such a person exists. A Muslim, a Muslim who never heard. So, and because of that, he legitimized it. In this case, that person doesn't blaspheme. In this case, that person, they are not judged as a non-Muslim because even though they are legitimizing what is unlawful by consensus and commonly known among the Muslims, but it was not known to him. It was not known to the legitimizer. And that's a condition. It's mentioned right here. It says, while it is known by the legitimizer to be unlawful. So in that case, even though it's in a very rare scenario, even though it's hard for you to imagine, but that's the rule. If a person truly did not know that that's the judgment in Islam, that, for example, drinking alcohol is forbidden, they did not know that Islam judges alcohol to be unlawful. They did not know it. They didn't know that this is what the Muslims believe. It never reached them. And because of that, they legitimize. In this case, they do not exit from Islam. They do not commit apostasy. However, they do commit an enormous sin, and they have to be taught. And because this is the basic obligatory knowledge, they need to know that. There's a list of things that they need to know that are unlawful. Because whoever doesn't know what is unlawful, he is going to most likely fall into it. So I hope this is clear. The examples given here make it clear. Legitimating what is unlawful by consensus and commonly known amongst the Muslims to be unlawful, while it is known by the legitimizer to be unlawful, such as adultery and fornication, sodomy, killing, stealing, and forcefully taking money of others unjustly. All those matters, they are known commonly amongst the Muslims, amongst the scholars, and amongst the laymen, amongst the Muslims, yani the Muslims who are not scholars. And it is unlawful by consensus. There's no difference of opinion about the fact that it is forbidden. Now, after understanding this main case, it's important to know that this judgment applies to anything in the religion that Muslim personally, he knows it's from the religion and he contradicts it. So to make it more simple, or to make it broader, anything that a Muslim knows, this is from Islam, this is the judgment in Islam, and while being aware of that, they contradict it, they belie it, they say the opposite, then that person exits from Islam. That person commits apostasy. Yani, like if somebody says about a sin, it's okay. No, it's not okay. That would be contradicting. Someone says about a sin, it's okay. It's not okay. So these are the rules that apply to these judgments. If a person did not know that this is the judgment of Islam and they contradicted it, and it's something that they can only know if they learn it, then they don't apostatize by contradicting. They wouldn't exit from Islam if they contradicted something that they were not aware that that's part of Islam, and that thing that they contradicted can only be known by learning. Because there's some things that they can be known by using the rational evidence, and there's some things that are related to the core meaning of the Shahada. So those things that are related to the core meaning of the Shahada, if the person contradicts it or denies it or negates it, then the person, they exit from Islam, whether they knew about it or not. So it's important to make the distinction here. It's important to understand the difference in these matters. There's some matters that are related to the core meaning of the Shahada. Some of them, like we already mentioned, like ascribing to Allah what does not befit Him by consensus, such as being a body. If someone, they attribute a body to Allah, this is something that is known by consensus that you cannot attribute to Allah. And it's something that is related to the core meaning of the Shahada. And it means the person, they cannot be a Muslim, they're not able to be a Muslim if they believe that Allah is a body. So even if they didn't learn that the Muslims say Allah is not a body, even if they didn't learn that the Muslims say Allah exists without a place, they didn't learn that. Nobody taught them that. And they had, for example, said the Shahada with the minimum amount of belief. And then later, for example, they came across something which made them think that Allah is a light, like a giant light. So the person started to believe that Allah is a light. That person, even though nobody came to him and taught him that the Muslims believe Allah is not a body, Allah is not like the creations, nobody taught him that. So he mistakenly assumed, because of something that he read, he mistakenly assumed that Allah is a giant light. So this person, they exit from Islam, even if they just embrace Islam, even if nobody taught them, even if that information didn't reach them, even if they were unaware that that's the judgment in Islam. So some things, if the person believes them or says them or legitimizes it, that person exits from Islam, even if he wasn't aware that that's what the Muslims believe. And that's what's related to the core meaning of the Shahada, the things that they're a minimum requirement to even be judged as a Muslim. And some things, like knowing that fornication is forbidden, like knowing that alcohol is forbidden, like knowing that sodomy is forbidden, like knowing that adultery is forbidden. Knowing these things, it requires learning. It requires that the person is taught in Islam what was revealed by Allah is that this such and such thing is a sin, etc. Because there's no way to know that or come to that conclusion or to find that out just by thinking, just by making a deduction, just by using the rational evidence. So I hope that this case is clear, Yani. You might think, what Muslim, while knowing that fornication is forbidden, and while knowing that sodomy is forbidden, and while knowing that drinking alcohol is forbidden, what Muslim would say that it's halal? Well, there's many scenarios like that. For example, someone wanted to fit in with a certain group of non-Muslims. Someone wanted to fit in with a group of non-Muslims, and they decided to lie and say they decided to lie so that they could fit in with that group of non-Muslims and say, yeah, some scholars, they said alcohol, you can drink some alcohol. They blaspheme. They blaspheme for what? So that they can fit in with a certain group of non-Muslims? Even if, let's say, that Muslim doesn't believe it himself, and even if he is saying it just to fit in, even if he doesn't really believe that, he blasphemes. And for example, like what's happening today in these secular societies, where they're pushing the agenda of homosexuality and trying to normalize homosexuality, and trying to normalize so what they call transgenderism. So this is not halal. This is not good. This is not okay. No one has the right to do that. No one is entitled to have sexual relations with a member of the same gender or sexual contact. No one is a man cannot call himself a woman cannot call herself a man. This is basic rules. So if because of politics, or if because of trying to fit in, or if because of trying to placate, or if because of trying to appease, or if because of trying to accommodate, let's say a Muslim in the university, he's part of, let's say, some sort of social club, or he's in his classroom, and he doesn't have the courage or the firmness, right? He's asked a question, or the teacher makes a project about it, and instead of saying what is correct, let's say, that student, because he doesn't want to get, let's say, supposedly embarrassed, he doesn't want trouble, supposedly, so he would say, oh, it's okay, for example. He blasphemes. He blasphemes. Or he would say that if they can do it or they have the right to do it. This is blasphemy. It's contradicting. It's contradicting. Like, for example, in some Arab countries, what are they trying to do? They're trying to instill what they call they're trying to instill what they call um, the marriage, supposedly, or the um, what they call common law marriage. where they say they just sign a piece of paper and supposedly they can live with each other, where they just go to the court like a secular thing through the man-made laws. So basically, they're trying to say that they're trying to legitimize fornication, because having these relations between a man and a woman without a marriage contract and without, of course, without the case where there's the master and his slave, the owner, the male owner, that he owns a slave woman. Other than these two cases, other than marriage, and in that case, there is no way to have the lawful sexual relations. So there's a big push in those countries to make it that they would claim would be legal for a man and woman to live with each other even if they're not married. And there's some people in those countries that claim to be Muslim that are saying that's okay. So this is how these things take shape, or what those things look like. And what, at the end of the day, what it's called is legitimizing something that's commonly known to be unlawful. So the Muslim has to be very steadfast. He has to be very firm on following the law that was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has to uh, abide by what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, regardless of anything else, regardless of anybody, regardless of his university, regardless of his corporation, regardless of the country that he's living in, regardless of the position that he's in. You can never contradict al-Islam. You can never oppose what God revealed. And I hope that is clear. So there are things that are related to the core of the Shahada that are a minimum requirement for the person's Islam to even be valid. For example, like the person has to believe that Allah is attributed with the attributes of perfection that befit him, and that Allah knows everything, Allah sees everything, hears everything, like the 13 attributes, for example. So if a person they doubted about or denied any of those attributes, they would exit from Islam, even if they didn't learn, for example, that these 13 attributes are attributes of Allah. And then there's some things that you can only know them through learning. You can only know them if you're taught. And that's like knowing that adultery is forbidden, fornication is forbidden, sodomy is forbidden, drinking alcohol is forbidden. So if the person didn't learn that, he was not aware of that yet, he didn't know that that's the judgment in Islam, and he legitimized it, then in that case, he doesn't blaspheme because he didn't know that that was the judgment, but he commits a sin. And in the case where the person knew that that's the judgment in Islam, but still decided to say the opposite, that person exits from Islam, even if they claim that they were joking. Moving on. It says, likewise, to deem unlawful what is commonly known among the Muslims to be lawful, such as selling and marriage. So that's another thing. And it works both ways. If a person knows about something in Islam, that it's halal, they know that this is valid in Islam, and they say that it's haram, and they say the opposite, then they exit from Islam, like selling and marriage. So it's commonly known among the Muslims that buying and selling, that this is halal. How many Muslim merchants do you know? This is mostly what Muslims do. They have things that they sell. They own shops. They own businesses. They have a restaurant. They have this. They have that. They sell this. They sell that. This is known amongst the Muslims that selling is halal, any specific type of selling. So somebody comes and tries to say that it's haram, then they exit from Islam. Of course, with the same conditions that it's that this person who is denying it or saying the opposite, that they are aware that this is the judgment in Islam, while being aware that Islam says selling is lawful. While being aware of that, that person, um, while being aware, says that it's unlawful. So that is um, the rule. And same thing with marriage. We know that marriage is halal. So somebody tries to say that it's haram, or that it's forbidden, or that it's wrong, um, they blaspheme, they exit from Islam. And even, and for example, like having multiple wives. So this is commonly known amongst the Muslims. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ did. So the person, he cannot dispraise it and or talk bad about it, or say that it's ugly or say that it's wrong, because that would be contradicting Islam. Because it's a valid, legitimate thing. If the person, they can afford it and they can equally provide food, clothing, and shelter, then he can, that person, he can have up to 4 wives. So whoever comes and says, no, this is not legitimate, no, this is not good, no, this is wrong, no, this is not permissible, no, that's ugly, no, that's bad, they blaspheme. They exit from Islam. And while being aware that Islam judges that it's legitimate. So remember, for these judgments that are related to the matters in Islam, that you can only know them through learning, you can only know them if someone passed it on to you with a connected chain, etc. Those things that you can only know through learning, if the person did not know that that's the judgment in Islam and he contradicts it, he doesn't blaspheme. He does not blaspheme. And as long as he, for example, didn't know that that's what the Muslims say, and he didn't know, for example, similar matters. The only example that I know about that right now is, like, for example, let's say the person, he knows that in Islam it is forbidden for the Muslim to say oof to his Muslim parents. And oof is an Arabic term which is used as an actual word. It's an expression which is used to show annoyance, and being disturbed. So it's known in Islam that if the Muslim says to their Muslim parent, oof, because their Muslim parent was annoying them, so they told them, oof, this is haram. Right? So the Muslim knows that, right? He knows that it's haram. So then when it comes to hitting the Muslim parent, then that Muslim, he should know also that hitting the Muslim parent is also haram, even if he didn't learn that specifically, even if he didn't, for example, nobody spelled it out for him and came to him and told him hitting the Muslim parent is forbidden. But because he knows that saying oof to the Muslim parent is forbidden, and that's way less than hitting, then for sure he has to know that hitting the Muslim parent is forbidden as well. So for that case, it would be considered that he knows that, or he's aware that hitting the Muslim parent is forbidden, even though he didn't specifically hear that. But since he knows that saying oof to the Muslim parent is forbidden, then for sure he has to know that hitting the Muslim parent is forbidden. If even just saying oof, which is not, which is like a sound that you make with your mouth, that's forbidden to do it to your Muslim parent, then for sure hitting them is forbidden. The next example is similar to what we've been talking about. Likewise, it is apostasy to renounce the obligation of the matters which are by consensus and commonly recognized among the Muslims to be as such as the 5 obligatory prayers or one of their prostrations, zakah, fasting, pilgrimage, and ablution. Yani, now specifically talking about denying the obligation of something. So it's known that the 5 daily prayers, that they're an obligation. So if somebody comes and tries to say that after reaching a certain level of spirituality, then you no longer are obligated to pray the 5 prayers, and that person is a blasphemer. That person exits from Islam. So there's a lot of spiritual scammers out there that they claim that once you reach a certain level, that you don't have to pray anymore. This is blasphemy. This is apostasy. But so, or to say, for example, it's sunnah to pray dhuhr or to pray asr, or that it's not an obligation, or that you have the option to do it or not do it. This is all apostasy. Of course, after knowing that the Muslims believe that the 5 obligatory prayers are an obligation. The same thing for paying zakah, for fasting, for pilgrimage, and for ablution. And so, alhamdulillah, that our Shaykh, rahimahullah, rahmatan wasi'ah, the great, the renewer, the reviver, the mujaddid, the hafiz, the muhaddith, the faqih, the usuli, the mufassir, the great wali, that he emphasized these matters because guess what, people? We're now heading into an age, we're now heading into a time where there is that agenda to normalize denying basic matters of Islam by the secularists. The secularists, they want the Muslim to say that it's okay to drink alcohol. They want the Muslim to say it's okay to be a homosexual. They want the Muslim to say we're not obligated to pray 5 times a day. They want the Muslim to say we're not obligated to pay zakah. They want the Muslim to say we don't have to fast Ramadan. They want to push the agenda of you can do whatever you want and you can't judge anyone and you can't say that what someone is doing is wrong and everyone has to supposedly respect and tolerate this and that. No, it doesn't work like that. We don't tolerate or respect the devil. We don't tolerate or respect disobeying the creator. And what does that mean, tolerate? It means that if we're able to do something about it, if we're able to change it with our hand, then we change it with our hand. That's an obligation. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ra'a minkum munkara فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه وإن لم يستطع فبقلبه." وذلك أضعف الإيمان فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. يعني the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever amongst you knows about something forbidden, then he's obligated to change it with his hand. And if he's not able, then to change it with his tongue. And if he's not able, then to hate it in his heart. And that is the least he can do, the least that he's obligated to do. So in the case where we have the power and the authority, then we change it with our hand. In the case where we don't have the power and the authority, then we speak out against it. We warn against it. We say, don't do this. This is bad. We say, don't disobey the Creator. This is bad. And we can convince a person using the rational evidence. We can convince them using the proofs. We can persuade people to stop doing what's wrong. And if they're not persuaded, then we condemn it in our hearts because they have no control over our hearts. They can't go into our heart and force us to say that it's okay or to believe that it's okay. No. We can condemn it in our heart. We can be opposed to it in our heart. And they're trying to attack that now. They're trying to attack that now. Recently, it came to my attention that there is some supposed famous so-called mufti from some supposed famous so-called mufti board, and they printed a paper, they published a paper. Of course, it's lies, but they're trying to claim that it's valid to give the zakat of the money, to pay zakat of money to the non-Muslim. So this is, you see how they try to, little by little, they try to undo the judgments of Islam. And what they published, that paper is not correct. But the dangerous thing is that that so-called mufti, he is famous and he has a platform. And that so-called mufti board, they are famous and they have a platform. And they reach a lot of people. So how many of the people trust them and know about them and they would take what they say? How many of those people would take what they say? Subhanallah. Likewise, deeming obligatory the matters which are not obligatory by consensus. So to say about something that is an obligation, although by consensus it's not an obligation, then this would be apostasy. Like for example, like deeming it obligatory to pray the 2 rak'ahs before the fajr. There's 2 sunnah rak'ahs to do before you do the fajr prayer. The Prophet ﷺ said that their reward is greater than this entire world and what is in it. Allahu Akbar. But even though that's the case, it's not an obligation to pray those. Likewise, renouncing what is by consensus religiously exhorted as such. And in renouncing by consensus something that is and it's something that let's just say it has validity, religious validity, has valid religious grounds. Like something that Islamically it's known to be something that you can do. And it's something that you get reward for. something that you get reward for doing, something that Islamically, the rules of the religion, they encourage you to do it, and you get reward for doing it. Let me give you an example to make it more clear. Let me make it more clear with this example here. So an example of that is like performing the witr. So both the knowledgeable Muslim and the uh, non-scholar among the Muslims, they know that these things are rewardable, like performing the witr prayer. So if someone considers one of these matters not rewardable, they blaspheme. Um, this is the example that we're going to give. And so basically that part means where it says, likewise, renouncing what is by consensus religiously exhorted as such, it's referring to matters that are rewardable in Islam. So whoever renounces a matter that is known by all Muslims to be religiously rewardable, like the witr prayer, they blaspheme. They exit from Islam. The author said to intend to commit kufr in the future or to do any of the aforementioned matters or hesitate in doing so, but not the mere involuntary thought of it. So if a person intends to, for example, tomorrow to commit blasphemy or to become a Christian or to become a Jew or to do something that is blasphemous, they become a blasphemer right away. Likewise, if they intend to do any of the aforementioned matters that we mentioned, like if they intend to legitimize something that is commonly known to be forbidden, or they intend to deem forbidden something that's commonly known to be legitimate, this is forbidden. I mean, this person blasphemes in the immediate moment that they intend to do that in the future, even if they never do it. And hesitating to do that also causes the person to blaspheme. What does it mean, hesitate? It means they are going back and forth within themselves. Do I do it or do I not do it? Do I do it or do I not do it? That would make the person exit from Islam. But the author excludes or denies the yani, uh, or says not the mere involuntary thought. What does that mean? Not the mere involuntary thought. If somebody they got a thought in their mind without their will, they got this thought without their will. Um, the existence of that thought, the occurrence of that thought by itself, it doesn't cause them to exit from Islam. So if someone got a thought without their will about something that's blasphemous, uh, just that occurring doesn't cause them to blaspheme. It's only if they begin to dwell on that thought and then they change their certainty about something, they begin to doubt, then at that point they would exit from Islam. But just the occurrence of the mere involuntary thought would not cause them to blaspheme. And likewise, to deny the companionship of our master Abu Bakr, may Allah raise his rank, and to deny that he is a companion, this would be apostasy. And also to deny the prophethood of whomever is recognized by consensus as a messenger or a prophet, like Prophet Adam alayhi salam. So if somebody says that he's not a prophet, then they exit from Islam. to reject the letter of the Quran, which is part of it, any part of the Quran, by consensus, or to add a letter to it, which is by consensus not recognized as a part of it, with the conviction that it is part of it out of stubbornness. So somebody says, for example, when they recite Surah Al-Ikhlas, they say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So they say, this part, قُلْ, it's not part of the Quran, it should be taken out, this and that. While knowing that it's part of the Quran, they blaspheme, they exit from Islam. And also, if they're reciting a verse and they add a letter on purpose out of stubbornness, they know that that letter doesn't belong there, but they add it with the belief that this letter is part of the Quran, out of stubbornness, they exit from Islam. This is why we say out of stubbornness, because if the person, let's say, they're reciting an ayah and then a person tells them, oh, that's not the way the ayah is. For example, they say it's without this letter or without this word. And the person really thinks that the way that the verse is recited is without that word or without that letter, because he got mixed up and he thought that really it is recited without that word or without that letter. So he was denying that word or that letter that is actually part of the verse. Then in that case, he doesn't blaspheme, because he really thought that that word or that letter wasn't part of that verse. And the same thing with if the person, while reciting a verse, he thought that there was a certain word or letter that is part of that verse, because he got mixed up, and he thought that this word or this letter is part of the verse, so he was adding it, but not out of stubbornness. In that case, he doesn't blaspheme also, because it's just simply like a mistake of recitation. The person believes that that's the word or letter that's part of the recitation, and they're mistakenly reciting it that way. So in that case, they don't blaspheme, but it's not permissible. Also, to belie a messenger, demean him, or use a diminutive form of his name with the purpose of degrading him, and degrading or demeaning or making fun of any prophet or messenger, while knowing that they're a prophet or messenger, this is apostasy, of course. And lastly, to believe in the possibility of prophethood of someone after our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, like the people who call themselves Qadianis, and inshallah in the next class, we'll talk a little bit about them, and we'll give a basic outline about what they believe and an easy way to refute them. But to say that someone that came after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to say that someone that came after the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is a prophet, then this would be blasphemy. This person would exit from Islam. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. May Allah Ta'ala, we ask Allah Ta'ala to make us die as perfect Muslims, to make our final words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.